podcast where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to roll-out facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we tackle the dairy industry's most controversial topics with the data and insights you won't hear anywhere else. I'm your host, bringing you the bold analysis that's made the Bullvine the dairy industry's most provocative publication, read by over 400,000 producers worldwide who aren't afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Today, we're exposing what might be the industry's biggest financial scam: feed additives for methane reduction. While big feed companies are convincing producers to spend up to $150 per cow annually on temporary solutions that actually reduce profitability, a genetic revolution is quietly building permanent wealth for early adopters. We're talking about Journal of Dairy Science research showing 3-No-P additives decrease income by $128,000 annually for a 1,000-cow operation, while genetic selection redirects 4 to 12% of wasted feed energy into milk production, permanently. Canada's already implementing national genetic evaluations, Europe's investing $27 million in genetic consortiums, and American producers are getting left behind in expensive additive cycles. If you've ever wondered why your extension specialist isn't warning you about the economics of feed additives, or why genetic suppliers aren't aggressively promoting methane-efficient breeding, this episode will open your eyes to the uncomfortable truths the industry doesn't want you to discover. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that, cuts through the noise and gets straight to the insights you really need. Today, we're tackling a big one: methane emissions in dairy. Now, it's often framed purely as an environmental thing, right? Something for, climate talks or regulations, maybe just a PR issue. But what if it's more than that? What if there's a hidden financial cost, one that's directly hitting your farm's bottom line, maybe costing you serious money right now? We're diving deep into how this affects your profitability, your sustainability, and honestly, we're going to uncover some pretty uncomfortable, maybe even surprising truths today.
Definitely. It's a topic that needs a closer look beyond just the headlines.
Our mission today is a really critical look at methane reduction strategies. We're focusing on the huge difference between two main approaches: feed additives versus genetic solutions. And the source we're digging into is the Bullvine article called "Genetics: Dairy's Permanent Methane Reduction Goldmine." Just the title tells you something, doesn't it?
It certainly catches the eye, suggests a hidden value there.
Yeah, it promises some really compelling stuff, challenges the usual thinking, and reveals some things that, maybe big feed doesn't want you to know. That's a quote from the article, by the way. Our goal is to pull out the key nuggets, the surprising facts from this analysis. Give you, our listener, a shortcut to being really informed on this. We want you walking away with actionable insights, things that can directly impact your dairy's profitability and, its future.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start by really hammering home this financial side of methane. Forget the environmental talk for just a second. Let's talk dollars and cents leaving your farm. Silently. Almost invisibly. The Bullvine article is crystal clear. Methane isn't just a greenhouse gas. It's lost feed energy. Valuable energy. Think about your feed bill. Now imagine a chunk of that just poof, gone.
That's such a critical way to reframe it. Usually it's all about global warming potential, which feels abstract, distant, but for you, the producer, the immediate thing is wasted energy. Every bit of methane exhaled is fuel that didn't do its job. Our source points to research, solid stuff in the Journal of Dairy Science, indicating methane is anywhere from 4% to, get this, 12% of a cow's gross energy intake.
4 to 12%, that's a lot.
It really is. And gross energy intake, just so we're clear, that's the total energy the cow gets from her feed. It's the fuel for everything staying alive, growing, making milk, especially the good stuff like fat and protein. So when a big chunk of that energy, 4 to 12%, is lost as methane, it means that energy isn't making you milk. It's not making components. It's literally being breathed out. It's a biological inefficiency you're paying for day in, day out.
And the Bovine article puts a number on it that really hits home. It says each cow is literally torching $300 worth of feed energy annually.
Sure.
$300 per cow per year.
Yeah.
That's not pocket change, is it?
Right.
Especially when you multiply it out. And it's constant, an ongoing drain.
Absolutely not theoretical. It's a direct hit to your profit. Just think about the cumulative impact. A modest herd, say 100 cows, that $300 per cow means $30,000 a year. Gone.
$30,000.
Yeah. Or a bigger farm, maybe 500 cows, you're looking at $150,000 annually just vanishing into thin air. This isn't some environmental tax someone else imposes. It's baked into your operation right now. It's a direct operational expense.
Wow.
That 30 grand or 150 grand that could be fixing things, expanding, or just, profit, it's revenue that never shows up because the feed you carefully buy and pay for isn't working as hard as it could. It means every feed dollar is underperforming. So yeah, methane is a very real, very tangible operational expense. It just doesn't show up as a neat line item on the bill, which is maybe why it's often ignored.
It's an invisible leak, basically.
Yeah.
A huge one. Okay, so if it's that big a financial drain, a direct cost bleeding profits, why do the solutions we keep hearing about seem to totally ignore that economic reality for the farmer?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like we're constantly being sold expensive Band-Aids instead of fixing the leak itself. Which leads us right into the first big part of our dive. These heavily marketed solutions. And what the Bovine article suggests is a pretty uncomfortable truth about them. The Bovine article, well, it really doesn't pull any punches on feed additives. Uses some incredibly strong language, suggests some popular ones are, and I quote, the industry's biggest scam.
Strong words.
Very. And that they make producers less money while pretending to help the environment. That's a shocking claim. But, the analysis seems to back it up with numbers that every producer really needs to look at.
It does. Let's dig into the specific financial realities, the hidden costs of these additives. Let's start with 3-nitroxypropanol, usually just called 3-NOP. Now, gotta be fair up front. Scientifically, 3-NOP does work. It reduces methane. The article acknowledges it gets about a 30% reduction in dairy cattle. That's backed by research.
Okay, so it cuts methane. That's the promise.
That's the promise. But here's the uncomfortable truth the article jumps straight to. The economic impact on your farm. There's comprehensive research, again in the Journal of Dairy Science, that found while 3-NOP cut methane by about 28%, it also decreased income over feed costs by about 0.35 cents per cow daily.
Wait, hang on. Decreased income?
Yes, decreased.
So you pay for this stuff, it reduces methane, but it makes you less money overall. How does that even compute?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It's astonishing. The article spells it out. For a 1,000 cow operation, that 35 cents a day translates to an annual shortfall of $120,320.
Yep.
A shortfall. You are literally paying money to make less money. What kind of business sense does that make?
None at all. It's a paradox.
It should make producers furious, frankly.
And it's critical to grasp that you're not just paying for the additive itself, which has its own price tag. You're also losing money on your core business, making milk. This is where the article talks about the recurring cost nightmare. Research from MDPI Animals says 3-NOP costs roughly $150 per cow per year, and that's every single year.
It's a subscription service for methane reduction.
Pretty much. It's a perpetual revenue stream for the manufacturers and a perpetual expense for you. The article calls it a rental solution, uses a great analogy, like leasing a tractor that disappears the moment you miss a payment.
Oh, that's good.
Stop feeding it and boom, methane goes right back up. So this model, it's fundamentally flawed for long-term farm profit. It never actually fixes the inefficiency.
Yeah.
It just puts a temporary, very expensive patch on it, like holding a bucket under a leaky roof forever and paying someone for the bucket.
And the production hit. That makes it even worse, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Journal of Dairy Science research, the article points out, showed cows on 3-NOP ate less feed.
About half a kilo less per day.
And produced less milk.
0.7 kilos less milk per day.
So let me get this straight. You pay for the additive, your cows eat less but are less efficient, and you get less milk to sell. That's like a triple whammy against your bottom line.
Exactly. It's the combined impact. Less milk to sell, potentially higher feed costs per unit of milk because of the inefficiency, plus the cost of the additive itself. It just decimates profitability.
It's like buying premium gas that makes your truck slower and you use more fuel. Where's the logic?
There isn't any. From the farmer's perspective, it's money you're simply not earning because your cows are less productive while you're paying for this fix. And if 3-NOP sounds, financially dubious, let's talk about Asparagopsis seaweed supplements. Red seaweed, the Bullvine article calls this one, the $500 per cow delusion extension won't challenge.
$500 per cow annually. That's insane. That makes 3-NOP look cheap.
It really does make 3-NOP look like a bargain, as the article says. And yes, the bromoform compounds in some red seaweed can slash methane maybe up to 71%, according to MDPI Animals Research. Huge reduction. But the cost is just astronomical. The article pegs it at $300-$500 per cow per year.
That's not just expensive, that's completely unviable for most farms. It's more than the potential energy savings value,
Really
sure.
more. It makes casino gambling look conservative, as the article puts it.
And if 3-NOP, which costs you money, looks like a bargain compared to this, yeah, that should tell you everything about where this industry is heading, pushing solutions that are either bad deals or just plain unaffordable. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable, something the Bullvine article tackles head on. Why aren't the institutions we trust, like University Extension Services, screaming this from the rooftops, warning us about the financial hit?
That's a huge point of concern raised in the article. It states pretty bluntly that university extension services across the country promote 3-NOP and similar additives without doing the basic economic analysis that every farm accountant would flag as problematic.
So they're promoting the methane reduction numbers, but not the income reduction numbers.
That seems to be the implication. The article pushes us to think critically. Why aren't extension specialists highlighting these production losses? Why aren't they calculating the real ROI for the farmer? The silence on these crucial economic details is, noticeable.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The data's out there, peer-reviewed journals, showing a financial negative for farmers. Why isn't that the headline from our trusted advisors?
The article does speculate on the why. It alludes to the possibility of industry-funded research without questioning whether it actually benefits farmers' bottom lines.
Right. Follow the money, perhaps.
It raises that question. It's about systemic pressures, maybe, not necessarily individual intent. But it does force a hard question about the independence of the advice producers are getting when there might be financial ties involved.
So if these heavily promoted fixes are actually financial drains,
Yeah.
what's the real alternative? The one that offers a permanent, maybe even profitable way forward.
Well, that's where the article makes its strongest pivot.
Right. If the additives are, let's be blunt, potentially a bad deal, what is the answer? The Bullvine article makes a powerful case. The real solution has been hiding in your breeding program all along. And this is why it argues feed additive companies are terrified of genetic solutions. Because, genetics doesn't require a monthly subscription fee, does it?
Exactly. It eliminates those recurring revenue streams that make additives so profitable for the manufacturers, but costly for the producer. Genetics offers a permanent, superior path. And the science here is solid. It's not wishful thinking. The Journal of Dairy Science, as the article points out, clearly states that enteric methane emissions demonstrate consistent heritability across multiple studies.
Heritability. Okay, so that means it's genetic. It can be passed down.
Precisely. It's a biological fact. And research from just this year, 2024, shows average heritability between 0.24 and 0.45 for 6 different methane traits. Now, what that means for you practically is that a good chunk, 24% to 45% of the difference in methane output between cows is due to their genes, which means you can select for lower emissions and make real progress through breeding.
So it's not just random chance. You can actually influence it.
Definitely. And the article also mentions genetic correlations between these traits, ranging from -0.15 to most 777. That's important because it suggests improving one methane trait might improve others, or at least won't mess up things like milk yield, fat, or protein. You're not trading one problem for another.
Okay, so it's heritable, you can select for it, and those gains build up over time, generation after generation. The article says this provides the foundation for permanent genetic improvements that compound, something no feed additive can ever claim.
That's the core advantage, permanence and compounding effects.
And that's the gold mine aspect, right? Redirecting wasted energy, making cows fundamentally more efficient.
Exactly. That's the key finding from Semix research cited in the article. When you select for low methane genetics, you're essentially recovering valuable metabolizable energy that was being wasted. Remember that 12% of energy lost as methane. Genetics lets you reclaim that. The trait they're working with is about 23% heritable, with good reliability 70-80% in the genetic predictions, so you can trust the numbers.
And the kicker.
The real kicker. the game changer. It has no negative impact on yield, fat, and protein levels.
Wow, okay. So unlike the additives that cost you milk.
Right. With genetics, you're not sacrificing productivity for sustainability, you're enhancing both. It's a total shift from the additive model, which often penalizes production.
That is incredibly powerful. Converting a loss into a gain. Permanently. No recurring costs. Making cows more efficient from the genes up. That is a gold mine. But this isn't just theory, is it? The article points to real-world programs actually doing this now, things that maybe some extension folks aren't talking about enough.
Absolutely. This is happening. Look at Canada.
Yeah, the article really praises Canada's leadership, calls it game-changing leadership that should embarrass U.S. extension services. Strong stuff.
It is strong, but maybe warranted, because Canada is the first country to implement national genetic evaluations for methane emissions. Not a pilot study, a national system running now.
How are they doing it?
It's a really smart collaboration. University of Guelph, Lactanet Canada, Cemex, academia, industry, producers working together. And the method is ingenious and scalable. They use mid-infrared reflectance spectroscopy, mirrors, on routine milk samples.
On milk samples, so stuff that's already being collected.
Exactly. The same samples you send for fat and protein tests. Mirrors reads the light bouncing off the milk, and that fingerprint can actually predict how much methane the cow produces. It's efficient. No extra work on the farm.
That's brilliant.
And the scale is massive. Lactanet collected over 13 million mirrors records over 5 years, analyzed 700,000 of them, and the accuracy. They found an 85% correlation between collected methane and predicted methane. That's really high. It validates the method.
So it works, and it's being used.
Commercially, yes. Cemex started marketing low methane semen in 80 countries back in 2023. This is available now, globally. And again, 23% heritable, 70-80% reliability, and no hit to milk, fat, or protein. It's a win-win-win.
So Canada's really leading the charge, making it happen at scale. But they're not alone, right? The Netherlands is also making big moves.
Definitely. The Netherlands shows incredible strategic thinking. Wageningen University heads up a huge international group, 50 partners, 25 countries.
Wow.
Big money behind it, too, $27.4 million from the Bezos Earth Fund and Global Methane Hub. And their goal is ambitious but clear. Reduce methane emissions from cows and sheep by 25% in 25 years using genomics and breeding programs.
25% in 25 years. That sounds like steady progress.
It is. The article highlights the cumulative effect. They estimate a 1% decrease in Dutch dairy emissions every single year, stacking up over time. Permanent. Cumulative.
That's fundamentally different from an additive, isn't it? Building it in generation by generation versus just renting a temporary fix.
Precisely. It's long-term strategic thinking versus short-term expensive fixes. These examples should be a massive wake-up call. It's about building a permanent advantage.
And these examples aren't just science projects. They're tied into policy and market opportunities, which brings us to another crucial point.
Yeah, the whole regulatory landscape.
Right. This leads to a really interesting, maybe worrying part of the puzzle. The global regulatory differences and this new carbon market reality that's changing the game. The Bovine article asks bluntly, are American producers getting left behind here?
It's a critical question with huge long-term competitive implications. Look at Europe. The article cites Danone's methane report on the EU's goal, cut greenhouse gases by 55% by 2030. And crucially, they specifically name genetic selection for feed efficiency as a key strategy. It's not just a suggestion, it's core policy.
So they're baking it into their plans.
They are. Look at Denmark. The article mentions their climate strategy requires farms over 50 cows to use methane reduction strategies, and they're bringing in an agricultural emissions tax in 2030.
A tax, okay, that's a serious push.
It creates a clear regulatory drive towards sustainable practices, especially permanent ones like genetics. They're legislating for it, supporting it.
So European producers are actively building these permanent genetic advantages through coordinated policy frameworks. It's a strategic environment favoring long-term fixes. What about the U.S.?
Well, the article points out that U.S. federal methane fees currently exclude agriculture.
Which sounds good on the surface, maybe. No immediate fees.
Right, seems like a relief. But the article argues this creates a false sense of security. It suggests U.S. producers are being left unprepared for inevitable regulatory changes that are almost certainly coming. While Europe integrates genetics into policy, the U.S. by default encourages reliance on these expensive additive cycles because the immediate pressure isn't the same. This puts U.S. producers at a huge disadvantage down the road. They'll be playing catch-up.
And it's not just regulations to worry about. There's this whole carbon market thing creating new ways to make money, if you're ready for it.
Absolutely. This is reshaping competition. The article mentions Wageningen's Global Genetics Initiative screening 100,000 animals. They aim to create standardized genetic improvements that, the article says boldly, will dominate export markets for decades.
Dominate export markets. Okay, that's serious.
It is, because it creates new profit centers. First, carbon credit markets. The article notes methane reduction credits trade for $1 to $15 per ton of CO2 equivalent. Think about it. A 500-cow dairy reducing, say, 2,000 tons of CO2 a year through genetics could earn up to $30,000 per year selling those credits. That's new money coming to the farm.
30 grand a year just for being more efficient genetically.
Potentially, yes. Second, processor premiums. The article mentions Danone cutting methane 25% in their supply chain, and groups like the Dairy Methane Action Alliance include big companies offering financial incentives favoring permanent genetic fixes. Lactalis USA is specifically named as paying farms $40 per metric ton of CO2e reduction. Processors are paying for sustainability.
So your milk itself could be worth more if it's low methane.
Exactly. And third, market access advantages. Global buyers, retailers, consumers, they increasingly want sustainable products. Producers with verified low methane genetics gain preferential access to premium markets. It's about securing your future sales.
This is where it gets, as the article says, terrifying for U.S. dairy groups not seeing this shift. While U.S. producers might be burning cash on additives,
European competitors are building permanent genetic advantages.
Advantages that will dominate export markets for premium, low-carbon dairy products. This isn't just about being green. It's about who wins globally, who gets the best prices.
It's pure competitive strategy.
These new revenue streams, these market advantages, they really highlight the need for a strategic shift. Which brings us right to the cold, hard numbers. The economics.
Yeah, the direct comparison.
This is where we get down to brass tacks, the bottom line. The Bovine article challenges you, the listener, to look at the hard numbers from verified Journal of Dairy Science research that your nutritionist probably hasn't shown you. This isn't just comparing. It's a side-by-side economic demolition of the additive argument versus genetics.
It really is. Let's walk through the real ROI comparison table from the article. The numbers are stark. We're comparing 3-NOP additive against genetic selection, looking at a 100-cow herd over 10 years. Okay, first category, initial investment. Feed additives. Seemingly zero upfront. Just start buying. Genetics. The article estimates $5,000, $10,000 for superior genetics like semen or embryos.
So additives look free to start. That's the hook, right?
That's the hook, but it's a trap. Genetics has a one-time upfront cost, but it's relatively small compared to other farm investments, especially given the payoff.
It's the classic no money down deal that costs you way more later.
Exactly. Now, annual operating costs for 100 cows, additives. A hefty $10,000, $15,000 every single year. That's the perpetual expense. Genetics. Once you've made that initial investment in breeding, the additional annual cost for methane reduction is basically zero. The benefit is baked in.
10 to 15 grand a year versus zero. That's huge.
It's a fundamental difference. One drains cash continuously. The other is a one-time investment. Now, extend that out. 10-year total cost. Additives. $100,000 to $150,000 over a decade for just 100 cows. Just hemorrhaging cash. Genetics, still just that initial $5,000, $10,000.
Wow. The difference is potentially over $140,000 for a small herd. That's unbelievable. That should be a wake-up call.
It absolutely should. Then there's permanence, additives. Temporary, stop feeding, benefit stops, like that disappearing tractor. Genetics, permanent and cumulative. Each generation gets better, building on the last. That's strategic value, building wealth.
Building real lasting efficiency.
And maybe the most crucial point for profit, energy recovery, additives like 3-NOP. The article states the impact is negative. It reduces milk by 0.7 kilogree a day. You pay for it and you lose milk income.
Double loss.
Double loss. Genetics leads to a 4-12% improvement in feed efficiency. You're redirecting that wasted methane energy back into making milk, making cows inherently better converters.
Okay, this is the core difference. Additives actively reduce productivity and income. Genetics improves efficiency and redirects energy into milk. One's a cost center, maybe even a loss center. The other's a profit center.
Precisely, which leads to the overall financial impact. Additives. That Journal of Dairy Science research pointed to an annual shortfall of $128,320 for a 1,000 cow operation. A huge net negative. Genetics. Positive energy redirection leading to immediate and lasting profitability improvements, converting waste into profit.
The math just demolishes the additive argument, doesn't it? As the article says. It's not even close.
Not really.
Genetic solutions, small upfront costs, deliver permanent compounding benefits that make your current breeding program look antiquated. If your advisors aren't showing you these numbers, you got to ask why. Demand answers.
Absolutely.
But okay, beyond the economics of the fix itself, there's this question of how we even measure methane. Is that being steered towards expensive stuff too?
That's another critical piece the article tackles.
Right. Let's hit this idea that you need super complex, super expensive measurement systems just to start. The Bovine article calls this measurement mythology. Is it necessary, or maybe another way to drain cash?
It's a fair question. Yes, climate-controlled respiration chambers give accurate readings. The article calls this the gold standard reality check. They're precise, but their cost $50,000 plus, and the fact they can only handle a few animals at a time, it makes them utterly impractical for commercial applications. Imagine trying to run your herd through one.
Yeah, impossible. A lab tool, not a farm tool.
Exactly. The article quotes research highlighting their limited accessibility and throughput and high cost of use and labor. Great for research, useless for day-to-day farming.
And here's that really sharp question from the article again. The same research institutions promoting expensive measurement systems often have financial relationships with equipment manufacturers. Where's the independent economic analysis showing these systems pay for themselves?
Right. It asks about transparency.
If the folks advising you are linked to the $50K plus machines they recommend, is it about your profit or selling machines? Where's the proof your farm benefits financially from buying one?
It challenges you to demand that proof. But the good news, the article emphasizes, is there are practical alternatives that actually work. These are validated technologies recognized by ICAR, that's the International Committee for Animal Recording, a big global standard setter, cost-effective solutions ready for farm use.
Okay, so what are they?
Well, there are green feed systems, portable feeding stations cows visit voluntarily, sensors measure methane while they eat, widely used in research, used in Canada's system.
Okay, practical. What else?
Infrared sensors and automatic milking systems. Farmers Weekly reported on these. They capture data while cows are being milked. Seamless integration.
Nice. Using existing routines.
Then there's mid-infrared reflectance spectroscopy.
Wow.
The Canadian approach uses routine milk samples. You're already collecting the sample, just need the analysis. Very efficient.
You talked about that. Very smart.
And finally, laser methane detectors. ICAR protocols show they're effective, offer another practical, non-invasive option, like a handheld scanner.
So plenty of practical, cost-effective ways to measure methane on farm exist. Validated. Available.
Absolutely. They totally challenge the idea that only the super expensive lab chambers are good enough.
Which brings us back to the question. If these work, why aren't extension folks universally pushing these practical options instead of or alongside the expensive ones?
It's a question worth asking.
Okay, so all this info, the hidden costs, the misleading additive solutions, the powerful genetic path, the practical ways to measure it all, leads to a big strategic decision facing every dairy producer right now.
Crunch time, really.
Yeah, we've laid it all out. Exposed the additive pitfalls, unveiled the permanent genetic solution, questioned the measurement hype. Now, the actionable conclusion, the urgency. The Bovine article puts it bluntly. How much longer would you let feed additive salespeople drain your cash flow while genetic leaders build permanent wealth?
The financial reality, laid bare in the article and backed by research, it really should change everything. Genetics delivers equivalent or superior methane reduction at a fraction of the cost, while also improving feed efficiency and productivity.
It's not a trade-off. It's a win-win. Better environment, better bottom line.
And the key profit driver is that energy recovery gold mine. That 12% of feed energy currently lost as methane, genetics redirects it into milk production. You're turning waste lost energy into an asset. More milk, or same milk with less feed. That means immediate and lasting profitability improvements. Pure and simple.
And this isn't some future dream. It's happening now, globally, at scale. The Bovine article stresses the window is closing while you read this. Those international programs, Canada's national system, the Netherlands' huge consortium, initiatives in 25 countries, they prove first-mover advantages are real and significant. Genetic selection is moving from labs to commercial reality fast.
The competitive pressure is real. Every month you wait, others are building genetic advantages, securing premium markets, developing better lines. It gets harder and harder to catch up. Delay isn't standing still, it's falling behind.
So what are the leaders, the proactive farms, actually doing right now? The article lists concrete strategies. First, genomic testing for methane efficiency traits, using validated methods, data, not guesswork.
Identifying the best animals genetically.
Second, integrating this into their breeding program, focusing on feed efficiency, methane reduction, making deliberate choices based on CEMEX research, international findings, shaping their herd's future profitability.
Selecting the right bulls, the right cows, building that genetic base.
Third, processor partnerships, capturing those sustainability premiums, like Danone rewarding lower methane or Lactalis paying per ton reduced, monetizing sustainability.
Turning green into greenbacks.
And fourth, carbon credit participation, tapping into those new markets that pay for methane reduction, another direct revenue stream.
These aren't just ideas. They're real strategies making farms more money right now.
So the final question, what's your next move? Before your competitors lock up those advantages, the Bovine article is super direct. Action 1. Contact your genetics supplier this week.
Don't wait.
Action 2. Demand specific information about methane efficiency breeding values in their bulls. Be specific. Don't accept vague green talk.
Know what to ask for.
Action 3. Ask the tough questions. Demand proof. Ask for genetic evaluations for methane traits validated by Journal of Dairy Science research protocols. See the science.
Ask for expected progeny differences for feed efficiency based on documented heritability from peer-reviewed sources. Know what the offspring will actually do.
Ask for case studies of herds using low methane genetics with verified results. See real-world proof.
And ask about integration strategies supported by the International Breeding Program success. Make sure they know how to help you implement it effectively.
Don't take vague answers. Demand the data.
Because the research proves, as the article powerfully concludes, this conversation, this decision you make now, it really could determine whether environmental compliance becomes your biggest expense or your most profitable investment. The stakes for your farm's future are just that high.
So this deep dive, it's laid out a pretty undeniable conclusion, hasn't it? Genetic selection offers a permanent, profitable, scientifically solid solution for methane. It stands in stark contrast to the costly, temporary, often counterproductive feed additives.
Here's a difference.
It's that rare dual benefit. Helps the environment and boosts your farm's profitability. Driven by good science, smart breeding, the choice, and that genetic advantage, it's yours to grab. But remember, that first mover window, it's closing. You need to act before your competitors figure out what you've just heard. We really encourage you, go find the Bovine article, read it yourself, dig deeper, and start integrating these insights into your farm strategy now. Thanks for diving deep with us today. I'll catch you on the next one.
That's a wrap on today's explosive episode of the Bovine Podcast. If this analysis opened your eyes to the genetic goldmine hiding in your breeding program while exposing the feed additive trap bleeding producers dry, you're not alone. The evidence is overwhelming. Genetic solutions deliver permanent methane reduction at a fraction of the cost while building compound wealth across generations. Feed additives create perpetual expenses while reducing profitability. The choice shouldn't be difficult, but the window for first-mover advantage is closing fast. Here's your homework. Contact your genetics supplier this week. Demand specific information about methane efficiency, breeding values in their bulls. Ask for genetic evaluations, expected progeny differences for feed efficiency, and case studies of herds using low methane genetics. Don't accept vague responses. Every month you delay gives genetic leaders more time to build advantages that will be impossible to overcome. The conversation you have today could determine whether environmental compliance becomes your biggest expense or your most profitable investment. Visit www.thebulvine.com to read the full analysis with all supporting research, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay ahead of industry trends that others discover too late. Share this episode with fellow producers who deserve to know the uncomfortable truths about methane reduction economics. Until next time, keep challenging conventional wisdom and building genetic advantages. This is the Bovine Podcast, where the most important conversations in dairy happen first.